For over 3,000 years, peace had reigned in the galaxy. This era of calm was known as the Unity Concord, a peace treaty that bound the major alien species together. The Ultherans, an ancient race of technologically advanced beings, were the ones who had helped create the treaty. They ruled much of the galaxy with their immense power and wisdom. However, they had always seen humanity as a young, unpredictable species, one that could easily upset the balance if not kept in check. At first, the humans had been quiet players in the galactic stage. They had colonized a few planets, made a few allies, and stayed mostly under the radar. But over the last century, things had begun to change. Humanity's technological advances were coming at an astonishing rate. They began to outpace even the older alien races in certain fields, like AI, resource extraction, and space exploration. The Ultherans, who had once viewed humans with a mix of curiosity and caution, started to grow nervous. They had spent millennia as the most powerful race in the galaxy, and the idea of a young species challenging their dominance seemed almost ridiculous to them. But the signs were there. Humanity was building things, ships, weapons, technologies, that made even the Ultherans uneasy. The old, cautious ways that had worked for centuries no longer felt like enough. One cold, quiet day, the Ultheran Dominion, the governing body of the Ultheran people, decided to take action. They would strike first, not in an attempt to conquer, but to remind the younger species of their place. They would break the peace, and through force, they would restore the old order. The target was a remote human colony on the outskirts of the known galaxy. It was a small, peaceful place, largely unprotected, with only a handful of human settlers working on agricultural projects. The Ultherans believed that by attacking this weak, insignificant colony, they would send a message to humanity, one that would instill fear and remind them of their lowly status. A fleet of Ultheran warships, gleaming with powerful weapons, set course for the colony. The ships were designed for intimidation, their massive hulls dark and foreboding, with weapons capable of obliterating entire cities. Their plan was simple: strike fast, destroy all communication, and make humanity realize that the galaxy still belonged to the Ultherans. What they did not expect was the response they received from humanity. When the first salvo of Ultheran lasers shot out across the sky, obliterating a few of the colony's defense structures, the settlers did not panic. They didn't scream or flee in terror. Instead, they calmly activated evacuation protocols. In a few short hours, every person on the colony was safely aboard their escape ships, heading for neighboring systems. The colony was abandoned, its buildings smoldering in the distance, but there was no sense of urgency, no chaos, no fear. Meanwhile, back on Earth, humans took the attack in stride. News of the assault spread like wildfire, but instead of calling for retaliation or expressing outrage, the response was laughter. People on Earth and across the colonies found humor in the situation. Memes started popping up, jokes about the Ultherans being outdated, about how angry old aliens couldn't handle the new generation of humans. The news outlets broadcasted the attack, but the stories were filled with tongue-in-cheek comments and snarky commentary. What are they doing, picking on a farming colony? One broadcast joked. Is this their idea of a war? In the wake of the attack, the United Terran Alliance, UTA, the governing body for humanity, issued a statement that left everyone confused. It wasn't a plea for mercy or a call to arms. Instead, the human leaders simply expressed their concern over the Ultherans' decision to break the peace, calling it a sad mistake on their part. "We expected more from a civilization that's been around for thousands of years," said the UTA spokesperson, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But I guess even the oldest species has a midlife crisis once in a while." Humanity had expected to be feared, but instead they were finding the situation amusing. The Ultherans were starting to look ridiculous. The attack, which had been meant to break the human spirit, was now just a punchline. The alien empire had miscalculated terribly. As the days passed, humanity's leaders gathered. They didn't rush into a decision or panic. They sat calmly, discussing the situation as if it were just another challenge to overcome. A few of the top commanders were irritated, but even they couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of it all. Instead of going into full-scale war mode, they decided to take a more strategic approach. "Let's not make a scene," one of the senior officials said. "Let's give them a little more time to think it through. They'll realize soon enough they've made a huge mistake." The Ultherans were about to learn just how wrong they were about humanity. What they thought would be the beginning of a terrifying war would soon become a lesson in human resilience and humor. The Ultherans had expected humans to tremble. They thought that the sight of their powerful warships and the sound of their devastating weapons would send humanity into panic. But what they didn't realize was that humans were not like the other species of the galaxy. They weren't afraid of the unknown. In fact, they found humor in it. And when the first attack on the colony had ended, the galaxy was stunned by humanity's response. Instead of retaliating with rage or fear, humans took to their communication systems. The news networks were filled with jokes, memes, and lighthearted discussions about the mysterious ways of the Ultherans. One popular meme showed an Ultheran warship labeled the Angry Old Alien Starter Pack. Another featured a cartoon of an Ultheran commander trying to figure out why humans were so calm, with the caption, "Did we miss the memo? Humans don't scare easy." The news outlets were buzzing with sarcasm and humor. People joked about how the Ultherans had forgotten how to fight and were now throwing temper tantrums. On Earth and in the human colonies, everyone seemed to be in on the joke. It was as if the attack had become a game, a bizarre but entertaining game. The seriousness of war was lost in the sheer ridiculousness of it all. The United Terran Alliance, UTA, the governing body of humanity, quickly convened a meeting to discuss the situation. The leaders were a mix of military officials, diplomats, and engineers, each with their own expertise, but none of them seemed particularly worried. The room was filled with an air of amusement rather than tension. "We should probably start building some sort of defensive infrastructure," one official said casually, swirling his coffee. "But I'm not sure we need to rush. It's not like they're going to be able to catch us off guard. Not after this." There was laughter around the room, as if the entire idea of being attacked was somehow laughable. But there was also an underlying confidence in their words. The humans weren't scared. They were prepared. "We don't need to act out of fear," Dr. Elena Marcos, the UTA's lead diplomat, said. "We're in a position of strength. Let's make it clear that we won't back down. But let's not be hasty. We'll let the Ultherans stew in their own mistake for a while." It was a strange way to approach a potential war. Most species would have rushed into defensive action, perhaps even mobilizing fleets of their own to counter the threat. But humans, they chose to wait, and with a certain arrogance, allowed the Ultherans to make the next move. It was almost as if they were testing how far the Ultherans would go before realizing their mistake. Meanwhile, on Ultheran-controlled space stations and command ships, there was confusion. The high-ranking leaders of the Ultheran Dominion were furious. They had expected humans to cower in fear, but instead, they were laughing. They had broken a 3,000-year peace, and humans weren't taking them seriously. The Ultherans found themselves in a strange position. They had underestimated their enemy in ways they hadn't thought possible. "We cannot allow this to continue," an Ultheran general muttered, pacing back and forth. "They're making a mockery of us." "We will bring them to their knees," another officer said, her voice filled with a chilling confidence. "We just need to hit harder next time." The Ultherans were planning a larger attack, one that would shake humanity's confidence to the core. But as they prepared their fleet for the next strike, they were met with something entirely unexpected. Across human systems, a series of encrypted messages began to circulate. The messages didn't contain military secrets, but something much stranger. They were humor-based communications, videos, jokes, and reports from human colonies, making light of the Ulthuran threat. One video showed a human colonist dressed in an old-fashioned military uniform, marching with exaggerated seriousness, as if preparing for battle. The caption read, "When the aliens forget how funny we are." Other videos included humans in oversized combat suits, doing silly dances in front of their defense stations. The videos were, in a word, ridiculous. They were a reminder to everyone, including the Ulthurans, that humanity had always been able to laugh in the face of danger. The Terran Command Center had received reports from all over, and it was clear. The message had gotten through. The Ulthurans might have launched an attack, but humanity was not afraid. They were just waiting for the next move. Back on Earth, the atmosphere was one of quiet amusement. The world had paused for a moment to enjoy the absurdity of it all. It was as if the galaxy had forgotten that humans didn't just survive. They thrived, even in the face of seemingly impossible odds. "We'll deal with them, but on our terms," General Marcus Reed said, the leader of humanity's military forces. "Let's make sure the galaxy knows what happens when you underestimate us." The public's reaction was simple but powerful. Humanity was ready for whatever came next, but this time, they weren't going to be afraid. They weren't going to react with rage. They were going to laugh, and the Ulthurans would have no idea how to deal with it. It was clear now. Humanity was playing a different game. A game the Ulthurans didn't understand. And in that game, the humans were in control. The galaxy would soon learn that, when humanity was involved, not even war could be taken seriously. The Ulthurans, despite their age and wisdom, had not anticipated humanity's response to their aggression. For the past few centuries, the Ulthuran Dominion had been the undisputed power in the galaxy. Their fleets were vast, their technology superior, and their armies legendary. They had never faced an opponent like humanity before. What should have been a simple strike against a weak, distant colony had instead turned into a source of mockery. The Ulthurans were now faced with the daunting task of salvaging their pride and reasserting their power. As the news of humanity's carefree response spread, the Ulthurans began to panic. The once proud empire, accustomed to respect and fear, found itself the butt of jokes and laughter. They had spent centuries positioning themselves as the galaxy's dominant force, yet one unexpected strike had turned them into a laughingstock. The Ulthuran High Council convened in secret. Tensions were high. Every council member, from the oldest and wisest to the youngest and most eager, understood the stakes. If humanity continued to mock them and make light of their aggression, their authority would be undermined forever. The Ulthurans needed to make a move, and it needed to be swift and decisive. "We have underestimated them," the High Chancellor said, his voice filled with frustration. "The humans have shown no fear. They have made a joke of our entire campaign. We cannot allow this to stand." The other council members nodded in agreement, but there was hesitation. What could they do? Humanity had surprised them by not reacting in the way the galaxy's other species would have. The Ulthurans had attacked a colony, yet humanity responded with humor, defying expectations. What more could they do to intimidate this strange, unpredictable species? The answer came from a younger council member, General Ralvok, who had seen his share of battles. He was known for his aggressive strategies and his unshakable confidence in the face of adversity. "We must escalate," he said boldly. "Humans do not respect us because they think we are weak. Let's show them just how wrong they are. We'll hit them where they live, their trade routes. If we attack their economy, we'll strike fear into their hearts." The High Council deliberated. Ralvok's plan was risky, but it was the only course of action that might shake humanity's calm. The plan was simple. Ulthuran forces would destroy key human trade routes, disrupting their commerce, their supplies, and their communication. The Ulthurans believed that cutting off humanity's access to resources would force them to the negotiation table. Ralvok immediately ordered his fleet to move into position. Hundreds of Ulthuran ships, armed with weapons capable of destroying entire fleets, set course for the most vital human trade hubs. They were prepared to do whatever it took to break humanity's confidence. But what the Ulthrans did not expect was that humanity had been preparing for this moment, quietly and without fanfare. For years, the United Terran Alliance, UTA, had been gathering intelligence, analyzing Ulthran patterns, and building countermeasures. Humanity had always known that one day the Ulthrans would act. They had simply been waiting for the right time to respond. Project Aegis, a secret defense initiative designed by the best minds in human engineering, was now ready for deployment. The project consisted of a fleet of advanced eye-controlled drones, autonomous ships capable of detecting and neutralizing threats before they could even get close. The Ulthrans may have had superior weaponry, but humanity had developed a new kind of weapon, a defense system that was faster, smarter, and more precise than anything the Ulthrans could ever imagine. When the Ulthran fleet arrived at the trade route, they expected an easy victory. They had not anticipated the presence of the eye-controlled drones, which intercepted their ships with breathtaking speed. Within moments, the first wave of Ulthran ships was disabled, their weapons useless against the relentless precision of the drones. The Ulthran fleet struggled to respond, but the humans were already one step ahead. The drones didn't just neutralize the enemy, they mocked them. One of the drones, known as Vanguard 17, intercepted an Ulthran communications signal and played a recording of a popular human comedian making fun of the Ulthrans. The voice of the comedian echoed across the Ulthran fleet's communications channels. "Oh, you guys still trying to be scary. We've been waiting for this." The Ulthrans were stunned. They had expected a quick victory, but now they were in a desperate fight for survival. Their ships, once a symbol of unmatched power, were now vulnerable to humanity's advanced technology. The first wave of attacks had been a disaster for the Ulthrans, but they refused to give up. Ralvok, furious at the unexpected resistance, ordered a retreat. The Ulthran fleet limped back to their staging area, their morale shattered. They had failed, not just in their mission to break humanity's spirit, but in their ability to intimidate a species they had once believed to be nothing more than children of the galaxy. Back on Earth, the response from humanity was predictable. The memes flooded in faster than ever, with images of the Ulthran fleet being neutralized by the drones. Ulthrans, 0, humans, 1 became the slogan of the day. The human population, ever confident in their ability to adapt, found the entire situation more humorous than ever. But what the Ulthrans didn't realize was that the more they tried to escalate, the more they pushed humanity into a corner. And when humans were backed into a corner, they didn't fight with anger or rage. They fought with intelligence, and the galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their strength, but their ability to outthink and outsmart any opponent, no matter how powerful. The galaxy was in a state of confusion. The attack by the Ulthran fleet had been expected to shake humanity to its core, but instead, it had turned into a galactic comedy. News of the humiliating defeat spread far and wide. In the aftermath of the failed assault, the Ulthran Dominion had become the laughingstock of the galaxy. But while humanity's response had been one of mockery and laughter, the Ulthrans were not ready to give up. Their pride, a centuries-old foundation, had been shattered. And now, they were preparing for their next move. In the grand halls of the Galactic Council, the ruling body of the galaxy's most powerful species, tension hung thick in the air. Representatives of countless worlds gathered to discuss the growing crisis. Some of the galaxy's most influential species had already pledged their allegiance to the Ulthran Dominion, but now the cracks in their support were beginning to show. The sudden and unexpected failure of the Ulthrans had left many of these species questioning their loyalty. The Galactic Council President, a dignified being from the peaceful Veridans, opened the session with a grim tone. "The balance of peace in the galaxy is under threat," the President stated, his voice deep and steady. "The actions of the Ulthrans have broken the Unity Concord, a peace that has lasted for over 3,000 years. We must decide how to respond." But even as he spoke, many in the room seemed distracted. News from the human colonies had spread like wildfire. Humans were not reacting to the crisis with fear or anger as expected. Instead, they were laughing. Social media feeds were flooded with jokes, memes, and humorous videos mocking the Ulthuan failure. The intergalactic news network IN had even reported that some humans were playing pranks on Ulthuan-controlled trade ships by sending them fake distress signals, leading to further confusion. "Shouldn't we be worried?" asked one representative, a high-ranking member of the Frogan Alliance, a species known for their deep intellect. "The Ulthuans are losing face. If they cannot deal with humanity in a way that enforces their authority, what does this mean for the galaxy's future?" The Veridan president turned to the Ulthuan ambassador, Tilkor, who had been silent throughout the meeting. Tilkor's once confident demeanor had crumbled since the attack, and his eyes were shadowed with frustration. "We have underestimated humanity," Tilkor finally said, his voice strained. "We thought they would cower under our might, but they have done the opposite. They've laughed at us, mocked us. We need to act, and act quickly. If we don't, we will lose our influence over the galaxy." The Veridan president nodded but looked unconvinced. "So you would have us join your war against humanity? Is that the only path forward?" The room fell silent as the members of the council awaited Tilker's answer. The thought of war against humanity, a species that seemed both unpredictable and resilient, made many of them uneasy. They had seen the humans' ability to adapt, their sharp wit, and their willingness to fight back when pushed. Humanity had already proven that they were not to be underestimated, but the idea of standing against the Ulthuans, the oldest and most powerful race in the galaxy, was equally unappealing. "We are not calling for an all-out war," Tilkor responded after a long pause. "But we must strike at humanity's heart. We must show them that the Ulthuans are not to be mocked. We must demonstrate our strength. If we fail to do this, other species will lose respect for us, and we will lose control of the galaxy." As Tilker's words echoed through the room, another representative from the Galanar Federation, a species known for their military might, spoke up. "You have already failed, Ambassador. You've thrown a stone, and humanity has laughed at it. What makes you think another strike will be any different? The more you push, the more they will resist." The tension in the room was palpable. A heated debate began, with some council members arguing for peace and others calling for further action. But amidst the chaos, the human ambassador to the Galactic Council, Dr. Elena Marcos, sat quietly, her arms crossed. She had been listening closely to the conversation, and when the time came, she spoke with calm confidence. "It's obvious you're all worried," Dr. Marcos said, her voice steady but firm. "You're afraid. You're afraid that humanity is a threat. But let me assure you of something. Humanity is not the problem here. The real problem is the Ulthuans. They have attacked us, not because we're a threat, but because they feel threatened by us." She paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. "Humanity will defend itself, of course," she continued. "But we're not interested in starting a war. We're just here to make sure that no one, not even the Ulthuans, can bully us into submission. You're right, Ambassador Tilkor, that the galaxy's balance is at risk. But it's not because of humanity. It's because of the Ulthuans' overreach." The room fell silent again. The words of the human ambassador had struck a chord. Many of the council members, though hesitant, began to see the truth in what she was saying. The Ulthuans had pushed too far, and now they were trying to force the rest of the galaxy to choose sides. But humanity's response was simple. They were not going to be intimidated. Dr. Marcos' words had sparked a shift in the council's attitude. The debate had not resolved the crisis, but it had begun to change the way the galaxy viewed the situation. Perhaps, just perhaps, humanity was more than capable of handling the Ulthuan threat on their own. And the galaxy was about to learn that a species that could laugh in the face of danger might just be the one to change the course of history. As tensions continued to rise in the galaxy, the Ulthuran Dominion found itself at a crossroads. The Galactic Council was divided, with some members sympathizing with humanity's defiant attitude, while others still believed the Ulthurans were justified in their aggression. But one thing was certain: the longer the Ulthurans delayed their next move, the more they risked losing their standing in the galaxy. Back on Earth, and in the Terran colonies, life continued as usual, though with a growing sense of excitement and curiosity. While the Ulthurans had focused their efforts on military escalation, humanity had quietly advanced its preparations. The United Terran Alliance, UTA, had been busy perfecting their next big move, a counterattack that would change the course of the conflict. The Terran military, led by General Marcus Reed, had quietly assembled a new fleet of ships, built with technology that far outstripped anything the Ulthurans had ever encountered. The key to this new fleet was their quantum shielding, an experimental technology that could deflect even the most powerful energy blasts. With the power of AI-controlled drones and the latest advancements in defensive technology, the Terrans were ready to strike back. But this was not just about military strength. It was about making a statement. The humans, having shown their resilience with humor, now wanted to prove that they were a force to be reckoned with, both in war and peace. They would show the galaxy that underestimating humanity was a dangerous mistake. General Reed stood in the briefing room, surrounded by his top commanders and advisors. "We've done everything by the book, but now it's time to show them something they won't expect," he said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "The Ulthurans think they can break us, that they can intimidate us. They think we're just a joke. Let's show them the true strength of humanity." His words were met with a chorus of nods and murmurs of agreement. The Terran military wasn't just ready to fight. They were eager to defend their honor. It wasn't about revenge. It was about proving that humanity wouldn't back down, no matter the odds. In a series of coordinated strikes, the Terran fleet began to deploy across key locations within the Ulthuran territories. But rather than attacking the Ulthuran military directly, they focused on the very thing that had brought the Ulthurans to this point: their pride. The Operation Spotlight was the first phase of the counterattack. The Terrans launched a fleet of drones equipped with cameras and sensors, entering Ulthuran-controlled space without firing a single shot. These drones broadcasted live footage back to the entire galaxy, showing the world what was really going on behind the closed doors of the Ulthuran Empire. The footage revealed a galaxy that had long been controlled by fear and intimidation. The public images showed a weak and fragmented Ulthuran leadership, scrambling to figure out their next move. Their military was in disarray, and their diplomats were struggling to maintain alliances. The Ulthurans, it seemed, were not the unstoppable force they had once been. The footage, coupled with human humor, began to shift the public perception of the Ulthurans. It showed them not as conquerors, but as desperate, arrogant beings trying to maintain control over a galaxy that was slipping from their grasp. Humanity had exposed the cracks in the Ulthuran armor, and the world watched, captivated by the sight. Across the galaxy, many species that had once supported the Ulthuran Dominion began to reconsider their allegiance. Some of the smaller species, who had long lived under the Ulthuran's thumb, saw the opportunity to break free. Others, who had once feared the Ulthuran's wrath, began to question their motivations. At the same time, General Reed's fleet launched a second phase of Operation Spotlight. They struck at the heart of Ulthuran-controlled space, but they didn't attack military targets. Instead, they focused on the Ulthuran trade routes, the lifeblood of their empire. Human ships, armed with advanced technology and the latest countermeasures, disrupted Ulthuran commerce without firing a single shot. They simply created enough confusion to cause significant damage to the Ulthuran economy. The Terran fleet was everywhere, but they were careful not to engage directly. They didn't need to. The Ulthuran military was already weakened by their failed attack on humanity, and now they were fighting an unseen, unpredictable opponent. Humanity had found the perfect way to hit the Ultherans where it hurt the most, without ever having to fight a full-scale battle. As news of the Terran counterattack spread, the Ultherans were faced with an uncomfortable truth. They had miscalculated. Their arrogance had led them to believe they could crush humanity with a single blow. But humanity had proven that they could stand up to their threats, outsmart their strategies, and make a mockery of their supposed superiority. The Ultheran fleet, which had once been a symbol of invincibility, now found itself on the defensive. The resources they relied on to maintain their power were being chipped away, and their once loyal allies were now questioning whether they should continue supporting them. Back on Earth, the mood was one of quiet triumph. Humanity had fought back, not with violence, but with intelligence, resilience, and ingenuity. The Terran response had sent a clear message to the galaxy. Humanity wasn't afraid of the Ultherans or anyone else. They were a species that could take a joke, but when it came to survival, they were a force to be reckoned with. The war had not yet ended, but the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. Humanity had proven that they could stand their ground against the greatest power in the galaxy. And the Ultherans were starting to realize that the real strength of humanity wasn't in their weapons, but in their ability to adapt, outthink, and surprise their enemies. As the galaxy watched in suspense, one question remained. What would the Ultherans do next? The Ultherans had been pushed into a corner. Their once proud empire, which had stood unchallenged for centuries, was crumbling. Humanity, once seen as an insignificant species on the edge of the galaxy, had become the center of attention. The Ultherans had underestimated humanity in every possible way. Now, their pride was on the line, and they knew they had to act quickly, before it was too late. The Ultheran High Command was in disarray. For the first time in their history, their leadership was divided. There were those who wanted to escalate the war and crush humanity once and for all. There were others who believed it was time to negotiate and avoid further destruction. But all were united in one goal: restoring their image and control over the galaxy. At the heart of the Ultheran strategy was Admiral Zorvac, one of the most respected military leaders in the Ultheran Dominion. Known for his strategic brilliance, Zorvac had earned the trust of the Ultheran Emperor. But even he was struggling to find a way to defeat humanity, a species whose resilience seemed limitless. "We've lost face," Zorvac said during a tense meeting with his generals. "Our attacks on humanity have only made them stronger. They laugh at us, and they mock our every move. We cannot allow this to continue. We must strike with everything we have." But one of the younger generals, Grektal, spoke up. "What if we change the narrative?" he suggested. "What if, instead of continuing this war, we offer peace? What if we show the galaxy that we, the Ultherans, are the ones who seek to end the conflict?" Zorvac paused, considering the idea. It was bold. It was unexpected. But could it work? Could the Ultherans turn their humiliation into an advantage? "We can't afford to be seen as weak," Zorvac replied, his voice tight with frustration. "But perhaps there is a way." As Zorvac mulled over the possibility of peace back on Earth, the United Terran Alliance was preparing for whatever came next. The last few weeks had been a whirlwind of diplomatic activity and military maneuvers. General Reed and Dr. Elena Marcos knew that the Ultherans wouldn't sit idle forever. They would try something new. But what would it be? On one quiet evening, as the stars glistened above the Earth, Dr. Marcos was called into a private meeting with President Jared Kensington. The president's expression was grim, and he wasted no time getting to the point. "Dr. Marcos," President Kensington began, "we've received word that the Ultherans are offering peace talks. They claim they want to end the war and restore peace to the galaxy. What do you make of this?" Dr. Marcos was silent for a moment, her mind racing. She had known that the Ultherans would eventually try to salvage the situation. But peace, after all the violence, after all the taunts and humiliations, could they truly want peace? "They've lost everything," Dr. Marcos said quietly. "Their empire, their pride, their respect. They want peace, but they need it to look like they're the ones in control. They can't afford to be seen as the ones who were defeated. President Kensington nodded, understanding the Ulthuran mindset. So what do we do? Do we accept their offer? Dr. Marcos thought for a moment. We'll need to be careful. We can't just accept their terms blindly. They will try to manipulate us. But if they're offering peace, it means we've won. And we need to show them that humanity will only accept peace on our terms, not theirs. The Terran leadership began to prepare for the upcoming peace talks. They knew that the Ulthurans would be doing everything they could to regain their lost authority, but humanity had no intention of backing down. Peace could be achieved, but only if humanity's dignity and sovereignty were respected. Meanwhile, the Ulthuran High Command was preparing to send an emissary to Earth. They had realized that their previous strategy of overwhelming force had failed. Now they would attempt a more subtle approach. The peace offer was, in many ways, their last hope to avoid complete collapse. Admiral Zorvak and General Grektal worked together to craft the perfect message, one that would make the peace offer seem like a victory for both sides. It would have to be a delicate balance, a recognition of humanity's strength, while still allowing the Ulthurans to maintain their reputation as the galaxy's dominant power. When the official Ulthuran emissary, Ambassador Zorana, arrived on Earth, the eyes of the galaxy were upon her. She was a towering figure, her robes emblazoned with the insignia of the Ulthuran Empire. But her usual confident posture was replaced with something else, something that looked like vulnerability. Ambassador Zorana sat across from Dr. Marcos in a grand conference hall. The tension was palpable. Zorana cleared her throat before speaking. "Humanity has shown us that you are not to be underestimated," she began. "The Ulthuran Dominion recognizes your strength. We are prepared to offer peace, not as conquerors, but as equals. We acknowledge that the conflict has been costly for both sides, and it is time to end this senseless war." Dr. Marcos listened carefully, not allowing herself to be swayed by the ambassador's words. She knew that the Ulthurans would try to make this look like a gesture of generosity. But this wasn't about generosity, it was about survival. The Ulthurans needed peace more than humanity did. "I'm glad to hear your offer, Ambassador," Dr. Marcos replied coolly. "But let me make one thing clear. Humanity will accept peace, but only on our terms. We will not be dictated to. The Ulthurans must understand that we will not bend to their will again." Ambassador Zorana nodded solemnly. "We understand, Dr. Marcos. We are prepared to negotiate. The war ends now." As the talks began, the galaxy watched with bated breath. The Ulthurans had been forced to the table, and humanity had taken the lead. The balance of power had shifted in ways no one could have predicted. The war was over, but the real battle, over the future of the galaxy, had only just begun. The peace talks were underway, but the fate of the galaxy still hung in the balance. The Ulthurans had been forced to the table, and humanity had shown its true strength. It had been a long road from the moment the Ulthuran fleet had attacked Earth to the point where they were now offering peace. The war had not only changed the course of history, but had also shifted the very structure of the galaxy itself. The galaxy's eyes were now fixed on Earth, where the United Terran Alliance had taken the lead in the negotiations. Humanity had proven to be more than just a force to be reckoned with in battle. They had shown that they were capable of diplomacy, of strength through unity, and of an unshakable resolve. As the Galactic Council watched from afar, many species began to rethink their views on humanity. No longer would humans be seen as weak or unworthy of respect. Humanity had earned its place among the galaxy's most influential powers. At the negotiation table, Dr. Elena Marcos and Ambassador Zorana continued their discussions. The Ulthurans were still proud, but their earlier arrogance had been replaced with a cautious humility. They knew they had no choice but to make concessions if they wanted to salvage anything from the situation. Zorana, with her usual composure, spoke first. "We have already lost much in this conflict. Our military strength has been shattered, and our alliances are in ruins. We are prepared to accept humanity's terms, but we must ask for a guarantee of peace. The Ultherans need to be able to rebuild. Dr. Marcos leaned forward, her eyes sharp and calculating. We understand the importance of rebuilding, Ambassador, but peace must be built on trust, not just power. Humanity is not interested in conquest. We simply want to be treated as equals, as a species with the right to exist and thrive without the constant threat of domination. The room was silent for a moment. The Ultherans, once masters of the galaxy, were now forced to recognize humanity's strength. It wasn't just about military power. It was about the resilience and determination that had been on display since the very first moment they had laughed in the face of Ultheran aggression. Dr. Marcos continued, "In exchange for peace, we propose a new treaty, a treaty that will guarantee the sovereignty of every species in the galaxy, including humanity. No more wars, no more threats. We will cooperate, share knowledge, and build a future together. But make no mistake, the days of oppression are over." Zorana's gaze softened. "We never intended to oppress humanity. We underestimated you. You are more than capable of holding your own. But there are many factions within the Ultheran Empire that will not agree to this treaty. There will be resistance. I'm not asking for an easy path," Dr. Marcos replied. "But the path to peace is worth walking. The Ultherans may have made many enemies, but it's not too late for change. We can create a new future together." In the following days, both sides worked tirelessly on the details of the treaty. The Galactic Council, once a body divided on the matter, now saw the treaty as a way forward. Several species that had previously sided with the Ultherans began to shift their support, realizing that humanity's approach to peace was not only the best option for their own survival, but for the survival of the galaxy. The treaty was finalized, and the signing ceremony was set to take place in the heart of Terran space. The Ultherans would not be in control, but they would be part of the new galaxy that humanity had helped shape. The old order was collapsing, and a new, more cooperative one was being born. At the signing ceremony, President Jared Kensington stood before the representatives of the galaxy, flanked by Dr. Marcos and Ambassador Zorana. The air was thick with anticipation, and even the stars outside seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself recognized the significance of the moment. "The galaxy stands at a crossroads," President Kensington said, his voice steady but filled with hope. "We have all witnessed the consequences of war, of unchecked power, and of fear. Humanity did not seek conflict, but when faced with it, we showed the strength of our spirit. Now we have an opportunity to build something better, a future where peace is the foundation, not the exception." Zorana, though still a proud representative of the Ultheran Dominion, seemed to agree. The Ultherans acknowledged their mistakes. She said, her tone surprisingly humble, "We are ready to rebuild, to become part of a new order. The galaxy will never be the same, and perhaps that is for the better." As the treaty was signed, the galaxy watched in awe. Species from across the stars celebrated, not just because peace had been achieved, but because it had been achieved without losing the values that made humanity unique. The ability to laugh, to stand tall in the face of adversity, and to fight for a better future. These were the qualities that had allowed humanity to change the course of the galaxy. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Humanity had not only secured its place in the galaxy, it had changed the galaxy forever. The dawn of a new era had arrived, an era where cooperation, respect, and unity would be the foundation for the future, and humanity would be there to lead the way. The stars, once distant and cold, now seemed closer than ever. The galaxy had become a place of hope, a place where anything was possible. And as the galaxy entered this new chapter, one thing was certain: humanity's story had only just begun.